Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to welcome you all to this afternoon's webinar. My name is Hugh Jones, and I'm a member of WRAP's Food and Drink team, supporting businesses to make better use of the resources they use. We work with every link of the food chain to reduce food waste and save money. We do this through a dedicated hospitality and food service team, including myself, Andy Twells, and Eleanor Morris, both of whom we will hear from later, and sector-specific resources that are free to use in the UK. Next slide, please. Please note that the webinar has been recorded and the slides and recording will be made available to participants and shared more widely as appropriate. I'm therefore obliged to read out the following. Chatham House Rule. A rule or principle according to which information disclosed during a meeting may be reported by those present, but the source of that information may not be explicitly or implicitly identified. Competition law. We agree to conduct this summit in a competition compliant manner, which will not involve any discussions, decisions, or subsequent behavioural change that may be construed as anti-competitive, nor shall we act in a manner that could be construed as advertising or promoting our own business or business concerns, or soliciting for business or work. Competition law concerns can arise in a number of ways, including from the exchange of commercially sensitive information, from an agreement or a more general understanding, or decisions to boycott, to refuse to deal with certain businesses, agreements amongst competitors to impose unfair trading terms, as well as agreements which fix prices or which otherwise limit output and supply. Failure to adhere to these conditions will result in a premature termination of the webinar. So with that over with, on to the agenda. In today's webinar, we will be focusing on the benefits food waste prevention offers businesses and how teamwork has a big impact on a business's efficiency. We'll start with a poll to ascertain people's expectations and level of experience in tackling food waste. I'll then provide an introduction to WRAP's initiatives and resources. This will be followed by a video from Cyrus Todiwala on the importance of establishing the correct ethic and principles within your team. Andy Twell provides his perspective through the eyes of an operator on how food waste prevention has risen up the sustainability agenda and how reducing food waste helps deliver on so many levels. Eleanor Morris will provide you with more detail on WRAP's guidance of Grub resources and how by implementing them, businesses such as Elior have benefited. To ensure you get the most out of this session, please use the Q&A or chat functions to ask questions of us, seek clarification, and to share your experience and examples of good practice. Please make use of the Q&A function at any time during the webinar, and we will do our best to respond to these at the end. And as a minimum, we will follow up with responses which will be circulated to all participants. Could we go to the poll, please? So please, could you complete the following poll, identifying why you are attending today's session, ticking all that apply. I'm interested in finding out more about reducing wasted food. I want to start measuring my food waste in order to reduce it. I want to find out what support is available to help me reduce my wasted food. I want to find out how to share my insights. I want to share with my networks. I want to develop a business case. Thank you very much for doing this. This really helps us with our understanding of where support is needed and where everyone is on their journey. So if we could go on to the next slide, please. So why does the food system need to change? Part of the issue around food waste is the fact that people do not recognize its true worth. People don't believe they are wasting food and don't consider it to be a valuable enough asset to take action to prevent waste. This is reflected in business where the cost of food waste is widely seen as the cost of disposal of the food. In real terms, the true cost of food waste is typically 10 times the cost of disposal. WRAP estimates that food waste could be costing businesses an average of £10,000 a year per site. At a global level, 1.3 billion tonnes of food is wasted. 70% of fresh water is used for agriculture, and 30% of greenhouse gases is created because of our food system. As a collective, we can all play our part at a global, UK, business and site level, and most importantly, as individual consumers. You and I, as consumers, are responsible for 70% of food waste in the UK. So how does WRAP's work address the problem of food waste? Well, our work contributes to the delivery of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, and we have a particular focus on Sustainable Development Goal 12.3, halving food waste per capita by 2030. On to the next slide, please. So the Food Waste Reduction Roadmap can be considered as an entry-level initiative to support the delivery of SDG 12.3. Over 250 food businesses have committed to reduce their food waste by setting a target, ideally in line with Sustainable Development Goal 12.3, to measure their food waste and report on progress against the target, and put in place an action plan to reduce their own waste, food waste within the supply chain, and consumer food waste. If you haven't already done so, you are urged to commit to the roadmap and take the first steps towards becoming a more efficient business. If we move on to the next slide, please. For those businesses who want to lead from the front and demonstrate to their customers, clients, and investors that they are serious about tackling food waste, then committing to Courtauld 2030 is the next logical step. Andy will talk a bit more about the targets and the impact that collaborative working has delivered. But this slide shows the 4 focus areas. Providing lower impact products. This can be readily achieved through a review of your menu design. Providing products more efficiently, through example, for enrolling your team on the Guardians of Grub courses. Influencing consumption behaviours by supporting Food Waste Action Week. And making best use of surplus by ensuring food waste is redistributed wherever possible. And there are many apps available to support you in this area. On to the next slide, please. These are just some of the benefits of collaboration. The challenges are too difficult and costly to tackle alone. Pre-competitive engagement facilitated by WRAP enables open and transparent discussion between competitors and their supply chains to work together to tackle food waste and save money. UK government is considering introducing mandatory reporting on food waste, and the roadmap and Courtauld reporting process gives businesses a head start. It provides the opportunity to develop and learn from best practice. Partnership and teamwork helps spread the load and widen the impact. Later, Eleanor will provide you with an overview on how WRAP's Guardians of Grub free resources and our Food Waste Action Week campaign can help you engage with your teams and customers. On to the next slide, please. So I've given you an overview of why the food system needs to change and how WRAP can help you make the necessary changes. We'll now share a video with you from Cyrus Todiwala being interviewed by Eleanor. In this, he demonstrates how passionate he is on driving food waste out of his business and how it is essential to lead from the front and make food waste prevention part of the business culture. If you're not using headphones, you may need to adjust the sound levels on your computer, and WRAP's very own Guardian of Grub, Andy Twells, will then give us his perspective. And please don't forget to keep the questions and your thoughts coming either Cyrus, through the QA or chat functions. Thank you.
Cyrus, thank you so much for joining us today. I'd like to know a bit about where your passion and interest in the area of sustainability comes from.
To go straight into that question, I think the sustainability issue has to come from your upbringing back home in India, where I grew up. So having grown up in 2 different places, or 3 different places rather, one gives you a perspective about what happens in a local environment and what is important. But then not to forget that in India, you do face reality all the time about poverty, about people being marginalized, about all sorts of issues, which the Western world somehow has lost its focus on in many respects, because we have an abundance of everything. We have an abundance of food, we have an abundance of resources. Nobody gives a second thought when they flick a light switch on and light comes on, or open a tap and water comes off the tap. So growing up in an area where you can open a tap and leave it open and maybe 2 drops will come out of it and there's no water in the tap. And the water has come to you through a bowser, which you have to be so precious and careful about that you don't waste any water. And then food, because when you see that you may have, as a middle class kid growing up, adequate food in your house, but around you, you see that people will grab, if you were to waste half a potato, somebody will grab it and pick it up and eat it. And when you look at that kind of a misery in some people, you become more aware of what you are throwing out and not throwing out. And we were always brought up never to waste in that sense, because you were made aware of, look around you and see how other people are suffering or other people are not getting what you are privileged to have. And that actually starts to slowly build into you. And food-wise, I mean, it is within the Indian like as it is, and in the beliefs, food is something that is too precious to waste. And we never trample on food. So if we drop something on the floor, we pick it up, we will never trample on it, because it is considered an ill omen, or it's considered bad to step on food. Whereas here, that culture doesn't happen, doesn't exist. And people will willingly use a tiny piece and throw. I scrape a packet of butter clean, there is nothing left on that paper. Even the tiniest bit is scraped off that paper. So we grew up that way. And then to have to apply that in your own environment over here becomes a sort of a dogma for you. It becomes a sort of a daily practice and routine. And we start to implement that from day one.
And how do you attract people to work at Cafe Spice Namaste, where sustainability is really at the heart of your operations? How do you make sure that your team are trained up and that are on that page with you?
I think it's also a repetitive system of being repetitive about it and making people aware and why they shouldn't waste, and there is a necessity of any sort to waste. As far as your staff are concerned, the most important thing for us is to be consistent with your approach, and you have to lead by example. And if you don't lead by example, then people will not follow you anyway. So to give you a story, we have come off the way we served our food into now doing food in a way whereby which there is very little wastage now. So our food bin that comes back from the tables does not even, I think, on a busy night, we don't get more than 5 to 8, 10 kilos of food waste anymore. It's gone down from a bin there to a bin there. And once you are constantly observant, and I was to be very observant, if customers sent food back, I would go and ask them, did you either didn't like the food or was it too much? Some of them say, was too full. So we know that we can give them the option to have a refill, but at the same time, we take away the portion that you think should be big enough and then make people comfortable with what they are eating and how they're eating. With the staff, we are very, very particular how much they use and what they use and how they cook with it and what they waste. And I'm ever vigilant. And now many of them have become like that automatically. They have just got used to the fact that we don't waste. Something has to be done with whatever there is. So, for example, I mean, take a cauliflower. Let's take a whole cauliflower. It comes with all those leaves on it. That's our lunch. All the leaves and everything become our food. We can't serve the customer that. But the stubs, they're very tasty and they're full of nutrition. But instead of chucking it out, we eat it ourselves for lunch or whatever. And everything gets used up like that. So it becomes staff food, but it becomes food for us, and they cook it for themselves. So they'll make sure it's not non-tasty. Okay, it's always be tasty.
That sounds delicious, absolutely delicious. And how do the teams react to that? How do they feel motivated by those actions, by being involved, by helping with the solutions?
I think the idea is to make them aware of what they are going to achieve from that. Once they get into the habit of understanding, then things get better. So, for example, in 26 years of Cafe Spice, we have never bought a waiter's pad, for example, to take orders on. Okay, now you get an iPad as well, you can take to the table. But I've always cut up all the envelopes, made them into strips, staple them and give it to the staff. Over the years, I've done that. So in my spare time at night, I'll be sitting with a knife and cutting little pads out of envelopes or used paper or whatever and giving to them. Now, I don't have to tell them. They see an empty envelope, they fold it into 4, they cut it and they push it in their pocket and they'll flip it over 5 times and write their orders down. Okay, so it's become a habit with them. They now know that this Charlie is going to get on their back.
Yeah, and that's because that's part of your culture within the site, within the business as well. And how do you, what would you see as the most important things that the chefs of tomorrow, the future chefs, should be learning about now to make sure that they're ready to address these sustainability issues and climate change?
There are many issues there, and it sometimes burns me up when I see young student budding chefs, because their education must begin in the colleges. So for example, if you heard of our competition Zest Quest Asia, and we have 100 marks for sustainability and food wastage, etc. And we make it a point that they are aware of that. And I'll give a 5-minute talk or 10-minute talk to the students about this is their country, this is their future. It is their responsibility to look after this country. People like us will be dead and gone in a few years' time, but it is their responsibility. And if they don't understand what they need to do for Britain to keep it going for the future, then it's a waste of effort on education, because they don't pay for it. They don't appreciate what they are getting in terms of what they are being given for cooking, in terms of blue tissue roll from the dispenser, in terms of chemicals, leaving taps open to cool food down. All those things just bother me completely, because I cannot see a tap dripping. It drives me nuts, because I used to run behind a bowser to collect water to drink or to wash my face. And I understand what the difficulties are of not having something and how precious it is for somebody. So it is for the older people to understand and practically divert that attention to the children, and give them the right tools to understand that they will come to a stage where every form of sustainability will become crucial to their existence.
And finally, when it comes to business culture and embedding that, and particularly around reducing the amount of food that gets thrown away, what advice would you give to businesses about where this sits within their company culture and the benefits of tackling that?
What happens is that people don't realize that every tiny bit that comes in also leads to wastage, and that wastage needs to be controlled. So staff have to be made fully aware of it. And from day one, it has to be drilled into them gradually, slowly. And I'm on that process all the time. I mean, okay, our staff are now more geared. A lot of them come from ethnic backgrounds, so they understand suffering and understand what things are. But food wastage is critical. Food wastage is critical because it leads to so many other issues. I think the easiest option is education, and what you can put into the minds of people slowly, gradually, starting with them from a really school level. I think that's where it starts. It's school level. So see food being put into a bin. To me, it's how many people that would feed in a country where there is no food for the poor people. And that's how I see it. And I see it as meal for somebody, that somebody's thrown out. And the staff have to be made fully aware of that. You remember that you're throwing something out where in our country, people will die for one morsel of food to be put into their mouth. On the customer's perspective, we have always adopted this very stringent policy that we stop them from over ordering right from day one. And Pervin, my wife, will make sure that the customer never over orders. And we have made it a point to all our staff, it's not about the money. End of the day, we want the sales, but why would I want food to be thrown away? That is blasphemy in a sense. That is, what do you call it? It's a sin. It's a sinful thing to do, to throw food away. So we have got very strong, regular client base, very strong. And then to question them and to ask them that you left that food, what was wrong? If it was not tasty, something went wrong, it's my fault, I can correct it. But why? He's saying we over ordered. Then why did you over order? So can we control that? So we reduced the size of our side dishes. We made them a little bit less pricey, but we reduced the size. So people don't order 10 side dishes and then feel that they can't eat anymore. We reduced our rice portion because rice was the biggest wastage factor. People think they can eat a big bowl of rice and then rice starts to fill them up and they can't. So we reduced the rice portion. And we now give people an option to buy a portion of rice cheaper than to have it a large portion on a plate. And so things like this, we learn from experience ourselves. We found the right kind of a container that will help to make it smaller. And so for one thing, the customer should not feel deceived or being cheated. On the other hand, we don't want to see rice going down the bin. It's just not right. And so all these things started to happen slowly over a period of time. And we started to inculcate that into the staff. And the staff have to understand that yes, we need the revenue, but we also, wastage is revenue. Every bit of wastage is revenue. When if it's before the cooking process, it's pure revenue. After the cooking process, it's still revenue because you have to pay for it to be disposed, to be taken away, to be handled carefully, and to be put into the right spot. So if all of these come together, then we have a healthier business operation and we can survive through storms.
That was a fantastic Cyrus Todiwala OBE with some real world examples of the effect of food and food waste within his world. Hello everybody, my name's Andy Twells. I'm a business and change collaboration consultant working with RAP. Just out of interest, you'll see an IQ scanning code on the right there. So as I'm doing my introduction, feel free to scan that. That will link you to be able to communicate with me after the webinar if you would like to ask any further questions. So as I say, I'm a business and change collaboration consultant within RAP, but my past 34 plus years has been working in hospitality. I've worked across the cost sector side of hospitality, in high street offers, in food manufacturing, education, new product development, and food services. And in all of those parts of the catering industry that I've worked in, I have been working with teams, and those teams with myself working together to drive fantastic customer service programs, authentic food offers, choice and more choice, working on projects where we're taking minimum space and trying to put maximum offers within that space. And in all of that, it's been kind of, food waste was on the agenda, but it was kind of seen as a cost of doing business. And those are the bits that I'd like to sort of talk to you about today. So if we can go to the next slide. So looking at it from the eyes of an operator, I guess within my world of food services, it was all about sort of profits, keeping the client happy, what the customers want, how do we make sure the team are bought into what it is that we're doing and are effective and engaged. And also it was about the environment, not necessarily just from food waste. There are other things such as health and safety, water management, and the reduction of utility bills. So I'm going to take each one of these topics in order and just give you a bit of an insight into what was my priority as an operator and how our food waste reduction programs at RAP can help you to answer some of those questions and bring it more around to the environment. Next slide, please. Okay, so profits. As Cyrus said, it's all about revenue, food costs money, and in business, we're all about making profits. So my directive was to ensure that all recipes were costed. And within some of those recipe costings, sometimes the actual food cost wastage allowance was anywhere between 3 to 10%. You know, I needed to ensure that all dishes were specified so that people could follow the guidelines and could help us with our ordering. I was always tasked to reduce my labor costs because labor is one of the most expensive costs within our business. And I was also tasked to reduce overheads and energy costs and improve efficiency. So how can food waste reduction support your profit goals? As Hugh mentioned in the opening of the actual webinar, we have the actual acronym Target Measure Waste, Target Measure Act, and that taken in its entirety is a good way to start on that journey. So targeting what it is within your business that you would like to save by looking at your food waste, measuring it, and then acting against the different work streams, which Eleanor will tell you about, and waste streams, should I say, that Eleanor will tell you about in the next part of the webinar, because each waste stream has a different action. It's all about not wasting the labor. So the cost of actual food waste isn't just the cost of the product, it's also the cost of the labor that's been put in to prepare that product, to fill the fridge, to receive the order. And it's also about giving you the opportunity, once you look at your food waste, to identify if there's any complexity in your menus and whether you need to address them. Because sometimes more is less. Less is more even. Batch cooking also is a good way to actually reduce your food waste. Now, I just want to give you a little story about that one. So it's not just about making sure that your food production is able to be done in batches. I'm going to give you an example of a day where we had to cook 120 portions of chicken jalfrezi, where normally you would cook it together and it would be served in portions on an actual sort of buffet type service. But what we attempted to do was actually cooking the meat separately, cooking the sauce separately, cooking the vegetables separately, and bringing them back together in terms of batch cooking. That way, anything left at the end of the day, the sauce could be frozen, the meat could be used for a sandwich filling, and the vegetables could be used in terms of a salad. So it's not just batch cooking in terms of reducing the portions that are going out, it's also batch cooking in terms of rethinking how you approach your food production. And then automatically, also, it gives you the opportunity when you look at your food waste to review your orders and your variety and consolidate the type of variety you've got on the menu. Next slide, please. So within food services, we have to sort of answer to our clients. The clients are generally the ones paying the bills as well. So I was always challenged with, meeting their CSR strategies and targets, reducing the cost of utilities for them. The cost of their waste collection as well. The more that was collected, the more the cost went up for them. They wanted to be part of their community, rightly so, and they also wanted to be seen as the employer of choice, because now there are lots of jobs out there within industries, and the employer has to work so much harder to attract their labor. And also, they wanted to embrace technology and innovation. So when you look at your food waste reduction, how can I support my clients' ambitions? Well, obviously, if you sign up to something like Courtauld 2030, it demonstrates that you are actually working towards sustainability. And you can use that in your client business reviews and create case studies that they can share as well. You can actually do involved activities with your clients, such as teaching kitchens, introducing farmers market from the local vicinity, to engage all of your clients and customers in your ambition to be more sustainable. You can introduce sustainability calendars, events, pop-ups, and what have you within your business as well. And finally, you can also share the great practices that you've got in place and bang the drum about everything you're doing. Next slide, please. So I think it's fair to say that the current customer base, the current working and spending generation, comes from the millennial generation, or Gen Y, and Gen Z. So these are generations that are actually caring about the planet. They actually want to make purchase decisions that are driven by compassion and in the environment, and actually have been able to go on holidays with their parents and enjoy authenticity. So they're quite a discerning customer base. So how do we keep our customers coming back to make sure that they become fans of what we do? So we need to meet our customers' expectation by incorporating sustainability in our offers. And not just incorporating it, but putting it at the top of the agenda, putting it on the top of the menu, and making it very visual for them. We need to build community relationships and create the fans of what we're doing. So that's creating communities in terms of social media engagement, using technology to link sustainability and health, because there is a link between sustainability and health, as we all know. And also want to be able to share the success and inform them on how they can support your ambitions. One of the waste streams that Eleanor will tell you about is called plate waste. And that is a waste that is generated by the customers in your establishment. And they can help you by understanding how they would like you to act against their portion control and the plate waste that they are generating themselves. Next slide, please. Most importantly for me, it's about the team. It's about the team taking ownership. It's about collaborative and collective action, agreeing correct behaviors within the team to recognize them. And what I've got up here is a little demonstration or a chart in terms of how you can use the tools that Eleanor will talk to you about shortly, in terms of making sure that you have a fully engaged team. It isn't rocket science, but it is important to have all of these in place. You have to have policies and SOPs around your food waste reduction so they can clearly understand what it is they have to do. You need to set ambitious targets and make those goals aspirational for your team to achieve. You need to put in training collateral to empower them to be successful and to allow them to develop skills around food waste reduction. Most importantly, you need to create a safe environment. So a safe environment isn't about blame. It isn't about who's created the food waste. It's about working together to actually reduce your food waste as a team together. And then how can we actually then keep our team engaged once we've got all of that in place? Let them own and share the ideas. you'll see much more effect from a team that is actually trying to generate dishes that they've created themselves and are more proud of them than if you're just telling them what to do. Calendarize activities, keep providing them ongoing support throughout the year, keep the motivation and the priority going, and most importantly, recognize positive behaviors and influences within the team, and and allow them to drive the way for you. So we would suggest that you support continued learning with Guardians of Grub with your new starters, and Ellen will tell you all that about that shortly, and make it part of your team's personal KPIs. I, as a senior chef, was always had on my KPIs environmental targets, but what about making it part of the staff, so making sure they're fully engaged? Next slide, please. So in terms of Courtauld 2030 and the environment, how can I demonstrate my commitment? Courtauld 2030 offers a business opportunities to go further in measuring a broader environmental impact of their food production and their business. Yes, it's about food waste, but it's about food waste plus. So we're working, as Hugh said, towards a sustainability goal 12.3, 50% reduction in food waste by 2030. But alongside that, we're also looking at the 50% reduction in the greenhouse gas emissions that are associated with the food and drink industry and the business that you have, in terms of looking at your scope 3 upstream and downstream impacts. And then we're also looking at water as well, because water is becoming a scarce resource. And by 2030, the UK food and drink industry would have helped achieve sustainable water management in the top 20 most important product and ingredient sourcing areas in the UK's and overseas, because we do buy a percentage of our food from overseas as well. So those are the 3 targets beyond measuring your food waste that Courtauld 2030 offers. Next slide, please. And finally, I just want to demonstrate that Courtauld 2030 is having an impact. We have to remember that our teams are also citizens of the planet, and they will be impacting their behaviours from home as well. So since Courtauld 2030 has been going on, we've helped consumers save 5 billion of food going in the bin by using Food Waste Action Week and other intervention campaigns. We've also, in 2020, 45 businesses this year have returned an average of 17% reduction in food waste against the supply chain. We can see more and more food surplus redistribution. In actual terms, 320,000 tons of food worth 1 billion have been redistributed by those in the last 5 years. Reducing greenhouse gases, Courtauld's commitment has measured about a circa 8% absolute reduction in greenhouse gases emissions since its actual inception. And then finally, water stewardship. 1 billion litres of water have been replenished back into nature through interventions, reaching more than 6,000 farmers and growers, allowing them to deliver the fresh produce that we require and use within our business. So that's a brief insight into my journey from being an operator into working in sustainability. I'm going to hand you over now to Eleanor Morris, who's going to tell you about our Becoming a Champion behaviour change campaign. So over to you, Eleanor. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Andy, and just brilliant to hear all those insights from your operator's position as well. So I'm going to give you a brief introduction to how you can become a champion and utilise the Guardians of Grub campaign. So you've heard from Hugh about the activities on food waste at a UK and a global level, and from Andy about the operator's perspective. I'm going to talk you through the tools that are available right now for you to take action today to save money and the planet. Next slide, please. So the scale of food waste in the UK in the hospitality and food service sector is over 1 million tonnes of food is thrown away every year. And 75% of the food that ends up in the bin could have been eaten. So that's really where Guardians of Grub is focusing on. Next slide, please. But we know that customers are really critical. So we understand from the Food Standards Agency Consumer Trends Tracker that food waste is really going up in terms of consumer interest. In fact, after food safety, food waste is the next most important area to consumers. So it's really going up. You can see on this top right graph that it's been increasing over time recently. In terms of engaging management, RAP and WRI published research that demonstrated the return on investment for food waste prevention within the hospitality and food service sector at a global level. And that showed that for every pound invested, reaped £6 to £7 return. But that was only if staff were empowered to take action and that policies and procedures were embedded into business culture. We also know that with plate waste, Andy mentioned that earlier, that the main reason that people leave food when they're eating out of home is because portion sizes are too big. So what are we going to do about it? Next slide, please. So we've got the Guardians of Grub campaign to help you tackle this and get data. So what we've got are 3 simple steps. It really is as simple as 1, 2, 3. So you take your containers, 4 containers, and you divide that up into preparation, spoilage, plate, and other categories. You have a tracking sheet to measure and a handy 4-week calculator to see how you're progressing as a team, understand where your hotspots are, and then you can tackle that. So it gives you those visuals that you can understand, okay, I need to focus in on one particular area, which might be plate waste, for example. Our calculator also shows you savings over those 4 weeks, and you get financial savings as well as carbon savings. So again, really helpful evidence for you to use. Next slide, please. On the Guardians of Grub website, we've got loads of fantastic case studies. You can see here an example from the ship in who used the tools, found it really straightforward to use the tools, and just tweaked what they were offering their customers, which actually really helped them reduce their plate waste and it motivated their staff as well. Next slide, please. So in terms of the tools that we've got on offer, we've got 2 learning tools. The first, and they're both completely free. So the first is our cost saving skills module. It's 15 minutes. It's available right now on our Guardians of Grub website, and you can see the QR code here, and it's everything that you need to get started on target, measure, act. So share it with your teams and see how you get on. We know the course is really effective and it helps to increase the levels of measurement on site. We've also had feedback that demonstrates that teams really do see it's relevant to their roles and it helps them to make a difference. Next slide, please. And we know that knowledge really is power. So our most powerful course is our Becoming a Champion course, which demonstrates real change. It's available right now. We've got a cohort available for people to join. It's completely free of charge. And we'll be hearing from Elior shortly, but you can see here a quote from IHG, who have also benefited from taking part in the course. And we've seen real change. So between 4 and 8 weeks, 38% reduction, 23% reduction, enormous changes in terms of levels of food waste. And participants, so our champions that are going through the course, also receive progress certificates and monthly progress updates showing all of the impact that they're making to motivate and keep that motivation going, but also provide evidence that they're taking action and examples of how to share with others. Next slide, please. So we know that consumers are really interested in this and that staff are motivated by this. So we've got a fantastic opportunity with the hospitality and food service sector during the UK Food Waste Action Week. So why not get started now to make savings by using the 15-minute cost saving skills course to kickstart your waste reduction journey, or sign up to our Becoming a Champion course. During the week, you can show customers that you're committed to tackling wasted food. Maybe you want to offer different portion sizes, refill options, consider what sides you're offering, and so on. There's loads of top tips on our case studies, and we'd love to have you involved as part of those activities. Next slide, please. So we know that there has never been a better time to take action and reduce the amount of wasted food. Your teams, your customers, your clients, and your future employees all want to see you walking the walk as operators. You've got all the tools for free right now and a week to raise awareness so that we can all together feed people, not bins. Just before we go into Q&A, we'll hear from our champions at Elior, who are a contract caterer. Charlotte Wright, who is their Head of Corporate Responsibility and Sustainability, Carl Perkins, GM, and Chef David, who'll be talking through their experience from the Becoming a Champion pilot learning. Thank you.
Elior have targets in place to reduce food waste as part of our carbon reduction strategy. So in that sense, you know, food waste is already on the agenda. It's something that we're already acting on. We're looking at ways to engage. We know that to achieve our targets around reducing food waste, we do rely on our site-based teams. We rely on our teams to use their own skills, expertise and knowledge to identify how to actually make that reduction happen. But from a central point of view, it's my job to think about ways to engage, as I've said. So it's about, okay, how can we keep this topic alive in the business? And how can we think of ways to get our teams to think differently about this? So really, it wasn't difficult for us to gain support internally. Our operational teams are always keen to get involved in new projects, and really, as the Guardians of Grub pilot and campaign is so engaging, we had no problem really with finding colleagues that wanted to get involved in it. So it was a bit of a no-brainer. So I didn't have any challenges in terms of engagement. Yeah.
We talk kind of daily, but kind of Monday we would have the results from the previous week, and we would then use our Monday kind of meeting as an arena to talk about waste as a topic. The guys would obviously have had time over the weekends to have a look at what was in fridges and freezers and the things that we may very soon be coming towards end of dates and things like that. And it gave us an opportunity to look at menus. And to really kind of, you know, bring the level of waste that we were creating as a site down, and also, you know, that continuous kind of level of awareness within the team really. It's really, really useful.
You know, the way it's laid out, the way all the visuals are done, the information, the way it's portrayed is very, very easy to absorb. It's a lot of information, but, you know, being able to stop, pause, come back, watch the videos, etc. Yeah, I think it's a really, really good tool, and it's very, very well done and very easy to use. And work your way through it was, you know, kind of makes it fun almost when you see the cool visuals and everything else. It's very well done.
It's you know, I think it's quite a daunting thing when people kind of, you know, look, try and reduce your waste, but it's with the resources and keeping, you know, the topic kind of fresh with the team. It's not a difficult thing to do. I think kind of going forward, it's certainly taught us how to look at our stocks, how to look at our production, and how to look at our day-to-day ordering. And it's kind of embedded the mantra that, you know, do you necessarily need all of that today? So yeah, just generally opened our eyes really, and kind of going forward, it's hopefully going to manage, you know, to keep GP up and the wastage down. So there we go.
So we've sort of, we got them more involved in the kitchen. We would do exercises with the chefs where we found that a lot of the time, some of the guys would feel this is more of a sort of blaming tool for what they're doing and what they're throwing away. But we had to change that mindset with the guys to say that this is not a tool for us to blame you for doing something wrong. It's for us to learn as to what we're doing and how better to do things. So, you know, we had an exercise where we actually took one of the bins and we put loads of bin bags all over the floor, emptied it all out, and we went through it together. And we came up with ideas. All of us had the input as to say what you could do with the stuff. So, you know, we had one of the chefs came up with the eggshells. You can steam them and then you can crunch them down, and people use them on their allotments for slugs, so they don't crawl over into their crops and stuff like that. You know, so everybody has the knowledge there, but I think it's getting them all involved, and you'll see how they sort of come out of their shell more, and they start to, you know, get more involved into it. I think that was one of the things we found at first, especially in the kitchens for the chefs. And, you know, the long-term benefit from that, I mean, you know, as I say, it opens your eyes as to what you're using, how you're using it, and, you know, being a lot more cautious and in more of a fun way, because, you know, people start to think more about what could they use their stuff for. do I need to throw it away? Could I freeze it? Could I save it for this? Or, you know, there's been lots of ideas. You know, we've had one guy think of maybe even the cores of pineapples being used as a substitute for bamboo shoots. You know, so there's been a lot of input, which is very good. So I would definitely say engage your teams, do exercises, don't just literally record it. You know, take it out, have it all together, do it as an exercise together, and get everybody involved, because, you know, it's not just us as managers in the kitchens to look at it and have the responsibility. It's also their responsibility. And if you get them involved, they will give more back to you.
Okay, that's brilliant. Thank you very much, Andy and Eleanor. We've now got the opportunity for you to ask questions by the Q&A function and the chat function to share good practice. So while the questions are coming in, I've got a couple of questions that I'd like to ask Andy in the first instance. So you've mentioned the importance of engaging your team, but how can you go about engaging the budget holders and line managers to make sure they're leading by example?
Yeah, that's a good one. There's always a scary approach, isn't it? If you feel that you've got an appetite within your actual operations to do something, but perhaps the buy-in isn't there at a more senior level. So we at WRAP offer the opportunity to run a thing. We call it C-suite, and what C-suite is an engagement at a sort of very senior level, and we would go in on your behalf and with yourselves and do the selling work for you, really, in terms of using the statistics and all of the great information that's available to us at WRAP to empower them to then sort of help you on your journey.
So the message is very much, you're not alone, come and speak to WRAP, and we've got hopefully most of the answers.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's good. And then possibly another one, very topical, obviously, current labour issues, supply issues, turnover in the team. How would you go about keeping the focus on food waste reduction and, you know, more importantly, climate change? How do you keep that going within your teams?
Well, I think, as Cyrus mentioned previously, I mean, there is a need for us to actually get it into education in the first instance. So the people that we employ come with an ambition again to want to work for an employer that has sustainability credentials. But I think the most important thing is with Guardians of Grub is to make it part of your new starter engagement, you know, as well as sort of all the good health and safety stuff you would normally do when you employ a new starter. But let's also put sustainability and food waste reduction on the agenda to our new starters. And obviously the Guardians tools are fantastic for that. You know, the cost saving skills course as well would be a brilliant thing to just have it completely within your new starter pack and expect them to almost do it before they actually join you on their first day of work, you know. So I think that, you know, the tools are there. You should use them to keep your, you know, to make sure your new starters and your new employees are already ahead of the game.
Thank you very much, Andy. That's a perfect segue then into a question for Eleanor. Myself and Andy helped develop the course, and I know there's an awful lot of work that's been gone on developing it. So how, you know, honestly now, how easy to register for the course, and, you know, in terms of completing it, are there badges or certificates available at the end of it that would demonstrate that people have achieved a certain level of that course?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So the Becoming a Champion course, which is this online learning, we do need to have people register. There's a really straightforward Becoming a Champion backpack, we like to call it, which has got everything that you need to register. You've got emails if you want to share with teams. The most important thing, and I'm sure it came across earlier, is about empowering teams to be able to take action. That's really important, and to have ownership within the business, to cascade it to teams, but also to take a level of interest with what they're doing and enable that to happen. You heard from Elior about how they managed it. We know that actually gets much better results when you've got senior management engaged and empowering those teams. People get certificates. There are 5 levels, so you get a certificate for each level that you complete. We've got a waste management tool that you can have an audit for 4, 6 or 8 weeks. It depends which suits you. And we've got all the tools and templates. Andy mentioned standard operating procedures and action plans. They're all available within these. So level 5 would be more senior activities. So how do you attract the right people for your business and so forth?
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Another one for you, Andy. So we've got people doing the course, they're engaged, they're enthused, they're making significant food waste savings. In your discussions with Courtauld signatories, how have they tackled keeping their staff engaged, once they've achieved initial savings? Any suggestions for keeping the momentum going?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the tools, the Guardians of Grub training tools and assets and collateral and what have you can only go a certain way to getting you on your journey. It's designed to get you engaged in the first place and offer opportunity for learning. Then it's kind of almost over to the businesses themselves. And I think some of the more engaged businesses have also taken a look at our citizens campaign, part of the website, where there are monthly sort of focus topics, around sort of food waste reduction, and taking them, or even sort of following a survey after asking your customers, coming up with, as I said, pop-ups or engagement training tools for the teams, and just keeping them sort of engaged, because it's really important to keep that motivation going. But I think the most important tool is to actually ask your team for some of the solutions, holding sort of in-house little competitions, chef competitions, so you can come up with a special that's going to be on the menu next month, and in doing that, it really keeps the momentum going, But I think also the Guardian's tools itself throw out quite a lot of visual references, as was mentioned by some of our chef colleagues over in Elior as well, a lot of visual references that you can share with your team. So it's about having those team meetings and making sure they're on the agenda, and for the senior management as they go in as well, to make sure one of their first questions is, how's your food waste? How's your food waste looking? And that just then keeps the momentum and the motivation going.
So I think what we're saying then is it's not a specific role. It's everybody's responsibility to tackle food waste and contribute their suggestions to tackle that. So that's brilliant. Thank you very much. One comment in the chat is about one of my favorite topics, portion sizes. My daughters, their seconds are usually bigger than my first course. So I'm very interested in anything to do with portion sizes. Eleanor has commented that our recent plate waste webinar is available, and that again is very much about talking with your customers, understanding what they want, possibly offering 2 starters instead of a starters and a main, and just listening to your customer, listening to your staff for suggestions, and reviewing your menu then to make sure there is a wide range of portion sizes available.
Yeah, and we've got some great case studies on the Guardians of Grub website as well, but really we would encourage you to measure and be inspired by the plate waste webinar that we'll share in the links here as well. But it's really horses for courses, pardon the pun, when it comes to portion size. So like Hugh said, it's very different. We've got some great examples. So a hotel, a very family friendly hotel, realised that their kids' afternoon tea was for all aged kids up until about 15, which obviously they have variations of ages. So what they did was, once they understood where the plate waste was coming from and looked at that with their customer base, they were then able to go with themes for different age groups, and it increased the amount of offer, people taking up that offer, but also reduced their plate waste as well. So it really is about understanding your customers, and we've got some really good insights and profiles of who wastes food in different settings. So we'll put the links for that in the follow-up email as well.
Brilliant, thank you. And one quick final question, which I'll try and address myself. So how do you avoid underreporting when food waste becomes a measure within kitchens? So I think this is very much as Andy's explained, it's not a blame culture. It's understanding why the waste is occurring and taking necessary steps to prevent it from occurring again. Measurement, only by measuring the food waste that arises can you begin to understand where the issues are. And it's been about open, transparent. If you're underreporting, you're only fooling yourselves on how much waste and essentially how much profit you're sending to the bin. Okay, well, thank you ever so much, Eleanor and Andy. So I think if we can go on to our final poll, if you can have that coming up. So based on what you've heard, please can you complete the following poll, identifying that that you understand what Wrap can offer my business and network. I'm interested in finding out more on Courtauld Commitment 2030. I'm interested in finding out more on UK food waste reduction roadmap. I will sign up to Guardians of Grub Learning, and I will take part in Food Waste Action Week 2022. Again, this information is really helpful to us to understand that you're confident in the road you're taking towards reducing food waste, increasing profits, protecting the planet, and getting your team engaged. So please contact us via the website guardiansofgrub@wrap.org.uk or foodwasteroadmap@wrap.org.uk. So just looking at the time now to thank everyone for your time and participation. We hope that we've given you the insight and tools to help your business tackle the food waste challenge, and shown by becoming a guardian of Grub how you can protect people, planet and profit in the hospitality and food service sector. If you've not already done so, we would urge you to sign your team up to the Guardians of Grub cost saving skills course and the Becoming a Champion modules. The resources are free, so why wouldn't you? We can all do our bit. We can achieve so much more through collaboration and by working as a team. Thank you again for your attendance, and we look forward to hearing from you.